Have you ever noticed something strange? Two students can sit in the same classroom, use the same textbook, attend the same lectures, and still end up with completely different results. One of them studies almost effortlessly. The other keeps trying, and somehow never gets anything done. At first, it looks like a discipline problem, but it's usually something else. Maybe this sounds familiar. You get home, you clear your desk. Everything looks perfect. The textbook is open. The notebook is ready. You even tell yourself, "All right, today I'm studying for 3 hours." For a moment, you actually believe it. Then, out of nowhere, your phone suddenly becomes fascinating. You remember the laundry. You wonder if there's something to eat. One notification turns into 5. 5 minutes later, you're doing literally everything, except studying. And then comes the worst part. You look at yourself and think, seriously? Why can't I just focus? Maybe I just don't have enough discipline. But here's the interesting part. What if discipline isn't actually the problem? What if your brain isn't refusing to study? What if your brain simply doesn't know where to begin? Think about it. If someone walks up to you and says, "Study biology," what exactly are you supposed to do? Read? Take notes? Highlight? Memorize? Solve questions? Watch a video? There are so many possible starting points that your brain has to stop, just to decide where to begin. And surprisingly, that's often enough to make you do nothing at all. Now here's something most people never realize. Your brain is constantly asking one simple question. What exactly should I do next? If the answer is obvious, you'll probably start. If the answer feels blurry, your brain hesitates. Not because you're lazy, because uncertainty is surprisingly expensive. Imagine someone hands you a huge pile of bricks and says, "Go build a house." Most people wouldn't start laying bricks immediately. The first question would be, "Okay, but where? Where does the first brick go?" Without that answer, you just stand there. Studying works exactly the same way. When the task feels too big or too vague, your brain quietly hits the brakes. And here's the part most people completely misunderstand. That hesitation feels like laziness, so you blame your discipline. But what's really happening is much simpler. Your brain is trying to reduce uncertainty. It would rather delay the task than make the wrong first move. That's why people spend 20 minutes organizing their desk, making coffee, checking messages, or watching just one YouTube video. None of those things feel difficult, because every one of them has a clear first step. Your brain always prefers certainty over confusion. Interestingly, researchers have found something similar. People are much more likely to begin a task when the very first action is crystal clear. Not the entire plan, just the first move. Because once your brain knows exactly what to do, it stops wasting energy trying to figure it out. And suddenly, starting doesn't feel nearly as difficult anymore. So how do you fix it? Surprisingly, you don't need more motivation, and you definitely don't need stronger discipline. You only need to make the first step ridiculously obvious. Instead of writing, "Study chemistry tonight," try writing something like, "Open page 47. That's it. Not chapter 5. Not an entire subject. Just open page 47. It sounds almost too simple. But that's exactly why it works. Your brain doesn't have to plan. It doesn't have to guess. It doesn't have to make another decision. It already knows what comes next. And something interesting usually happens. Once page 47 is open, reading the first sentence doesn't feel difficult. After reading the first sentence, solving one question feels reasonable, then another, and before you even notice, you're actually studying. Think about pushing a parked car. The hardest part isn't keeping the car moving. The hardest part is getting it to move in the first place. Once the wheels start rolling, everything becomes easier. Studying works the same way. Starting always feels heavier than continuing. That's why waiting for motivation is usually a losing strategy. Motivation comes and goes. Some days you'll have plenty of it. Other days, you won't have any at all. But a tiny first action doesn't depend on motivation. It only depends on being easy enough to begin. And that's exactly what makes it so powerful. So here's something worth trying tonight. Don't make another huge study plan. Don't promise yourself 4 perfect hours. And don't wait until you finally feel motivated. Instead, make tomorrow's first step impossible to misunderstand. Take a sticky note. Write one tiny instruction. Open page 47. Or solve question 1. Then stick it right on top of your textbook. That's it. Tomorrow, when you sit down, you won't waste energy wondering where to begin. The decision has already been made, and that tiny difference changes everything, because every decision costs mental energy. The fewer decisions you make, the easier it becomes to take action. That's why successful students don't always have stronger willpower. They simply remove unnecessary choices. They make starting so easy that procrastination has almost nothing left to fight against. And here's something most people discover after trying this. Once you've started, stopping actually becomes the hard part. One question turns into 3. 3 pages become 10. A planned 10-minute session somehow becomes 45 minutes, not because you suddenly became disciplined, but because your brain finally got moving. The hardest step was never studying. The hardest step was starting. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I just need more discipline," pause for a second. Ask yourself a different question. Have I actually made the first step obvious? Because your brain isn't asking, "Can I do this?" Your brain is asking, "What's the very first thing I should do?" Answer that question, and you'll be surprised how often the rest takes care of itself. The best study method isn't the one with the perfect timetable. It isn't the most expensive course, and it definitely isn't the one that demands superhuman discipline. It's the one that makes starting feel almost effortless, because once you take that first tiny step, the second one becomes easier, then the third. And before you know it, you're no longer waiting to become disciplined. You're already doing the work.